Welcome in, everyone, to a lunchtime fallout. Another day after recap look. St. Louis City SC 2-1 loss against the Columbus Crew. And as usual, I'm joined by my friend Santiago Beltran. I'm Matt Baker, and we are Flyover Footy. And we're here at lunchtime. Grab some lunch. Hopefully you can take a little bit of a break from work if you're joining us on our live stream. And we'll take a look at this City 2-1 loss. Santi, how you doing?
Doing great, Matt. Obviously, a little bit of hope yesterday during the first half, but then you get a goal by Columbus towards the end of the half, and then things changed quickly on the second half, and it was another loss. So, a little bit of hope, and the team showed some good things, but still another loss.
Yeah, we'll dive into all the moments. We'll dive into some of the big stories, the things that it seems like the fan base are talking about this morning, which is, I don't know, it's kind of fascinating to see how the discourse is going this morning. I don't know if you've been able to pay attention to any in the comments, things that are going on this morning, Santi.
Oh no, I have not. Guess I'm missing out on good stuff.
I wouldn't say good stuff. I mean, um, I've got a screenshot that I'll probably share for our people who tune into the live stream and watch on YouTube about one of the goals that we allowed. But other than that, I mean, it's another loss. Like it's starting. I mean, there's more positive stuff. We'll get into the positivity around it, but it's just I don't know. It's frustrating to slip further and further down the table as the season is still young.
Yeah, and the calendar is not getting any better. I knew
Yeah.
these first 10 games were gonna be really difficult, but never expected Columbus to be in first place and then to play Vancouver in first place the following week. But that's what the schedule has for City.
And our Instagram live stream is definitely not working right now, so that's
Mm.
unfortunate. So if you're checking us out on YouTube or X or maybe Facebook, I think I might have got Facebook working. As I said it, I willed it into existence. So there
Okay,
we go. You ready to get going with the pod recording?
let's do it.
All right, let me make sure I got our chat working. Yep, chat's working nice. If you got any questions for us, let us know. We'll talk about every single thing you have. If you have a question about why we did a certain thing, we'll dive into it. If you have a question on a moment that you saw, if you got a take on any of our, if you have a take on any of our issues that we bring up, let us know. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another Flyover Fallout. This look at the 2-1 St. Louis City SC defeat to the Columbus Crew on Sunday Night Soccer at Energizer Park. And it was a match that in a lot of ways went as we expected it to. We'll talk about the possession numbers here shortly. But in a lot of ways, it was also a little bit of a surprise match in the fight that St. Louis showed. The lineup, we'll talk about, we did a good job projecting it, but did it live up to the hype? Was it on the field exactly what we wanted to see on paper? And so to do all that, I'm joined, like I said, by my friend Santiago Beltran. Santi, you were on the call. How you doing this day after? How you feeling about this match that we're about to dive into?
Doing great, Matt. Obviously, another loss. It's just four in a row, and feeling that way for four consecutive matches is not good. But it was an entertaining game, and St. Louis scored first and created some chances. But in the end, it wasn't enough against a good Columbus team that show why they are one of the best teams in MLS right now.
And that's where it comes into play that we saw what we expected to see from Columbus. They showed quality on the ball. They showed the dynamic action they can have in the final third, and they showed just how much they live in the opponent's half of the field. But on the St. Louis side, the way that it started off with the starting 11 was Ben Lunton goal again as we await the return of Roman Berkey. Hopefully, we're only a week or two away from seeing that return. We'll see how training develops this week because, as Olaf Melberg had said, once Berkey's cleared by the staff, he should be plugged right in. So Ben Lunt was in goal for this game. Our back line, three center back look that saw Timo Baumgartel get his first start as a St. Louis City SC player, first MLS start. Timo Baumgartel was joined by Henry Kessler and Josh Yaro on the back line, left to right. Kyle Hebert was our left wing back. We saw Alfredo Morales and Marcel Hartl as central midfielders, and Conrad Wallem was our right wing back. Celio Pompeu, Klaus, and Cedric Teuchert were our attackers. It could be argued as a 3-4-2-1 or a 3-4-3, but this was the lineup that we wanted to see, Santi. We projected it. We saw 11 out of 11. We had 11 out of 11 of our projected. We saw 3 attackers. We saw Marcel Hartl at the central midfield spot. Timo Baumgartel, like I said, first start. The one difference that we had from our projection on the positioning is that we expected Kyle Hebert to be on the right and Conrad Wallem on the left. But for the second straight game, despite all of the talk of Conrad Wallem and Celio Pompeu connecting well, you had them line up on opposite sides of the field. Short-lived as it was, because this really was the look for the first 30 minutes. In addition to this, we had 2 short-term loans, and this helped to feed into why we projected it the way we did, is that bringing up Mackay Joyner, the homegrown City 2, off-roster homegrown that's playing for City 2, and Brendan McSorley, the forward who is signed directly to City 2. Brendan McSorley, as a City 2 player, gets 4 short-term loans. He now has 3 remaining to City, and Mackay Joyner, as an off-roster homegrown, gets 6 short-term loans up to City. He has 5 remaining, and he actually appeared at the end of the game. So what did you make of this lineup, and what did you make of Conrad Wallem on the right and Kyle Hebert on the left?
I like seeing Wallem on the right. The game against Sporting KC, when he played there for the first 25 minutes before Joachim Nilsson's injury, he was involved in the attack. He created. He was in a couple of scoring opportunities, and I like what I saw in those 25 minutes. Obviously, a small sample, but I was excited about seeing him on the right, especially because against Sporting KC, when he was sent to the left side, like basically City was only attacking on that side, which makes the team become very predictable. So I was like, okay, you have a weapon on the right side, you will have some balance, you'll be able to create opportunities from both sides. So I like seeing him on the right side, and I also was excited about seeing Timo Baumgart played his first start and play as a center back.
Timo Baumgartel actually spoke post-game, and one of the things that was exciting from him is what he was doing on the ball, in how he was kind of told to move the ball up, progress the ball a little bit. And this is exactly what we wanted to see and why we wanted to see this 11. If you have Timo Baumgartel as one of your center backs, a center back who is touted and is a self-proclaimed player who likes to be on the ball, he likes to control the ball. If you can have him move the ball up themselves, so you're getting your center backs a little more pushed into midfield in progressing the ball up the field, then you're allowing your midfielders to connect the lines better. And it makes using Marcel Hartl in the central midfield a little more palatable, because in the central midfield role, in that Edu Leuven role ish, alongside Alfredo Morales, you take Hartl out of the attack just by sheer default positioning. He's not as involved in the attack, even though he's still that free roaming central midfielder. He can push up if he needs to be, and if there's time to get up, but his positioning is just deeper lying. And so when you have that deeper lying midfielder, you're allowing that midfield position to be a little more advanced just inherently by having a center back who can take the ball and take space with the ball in a better way. And so that was nice to see, and I thought that worked out fairly well on a few occasions. Baumgartel also did a good job of protecting the ball. So I have seen enough of Timo Baumgartel in this game and with City 2 that I'm comfortable if he's in our starting lineup from here on out. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's selected, especially with the injury and continuing issues with Joachim Nilsson. We'll say that. And the unknown with Josh Yaro. And I guess, we'll talk about most of the other players, Celio, Klaus, and Teuchert, as the episode progresses, but let's just dive into a couple of the big stories that are emerging after this game. One of them being Josh Yaro, and the other being the Klaus offside goal call. Let's just get out in front of this one and talk about the Josh Yaro head injury. In the stadium, I don't know what you saw real time, but those bang bang plays when you're in the stadium, you don't really, like, your eyes are drawn to different things. They're drawn to the ball. You're following the ball. I didn't really make note of what exactly happened, but looking at the video replay and seeing some of the videos, I posted one of them, or I quote tweeted one of them from a fan who was in that part of the stadium. Holy cow. That was terrifying to see Josh Yaro try to clear the ball with his head on a cross and then go down, and it seemed like he hit his head on the ground as he fell, and he was motionless for a period of time. And that's horrifying to see. So what ended up happening is the medical staff came on, they attended to Josh Yaro on the field. They took Josh Yaro off the field. He was off for a period of time. Now, with head injuries, you don't have to remain off the field for any set period of time. You're not automatically down a player just because the staff enters the field. This is one of the exceptions to the rule. The keepers and the head injuries, those are the exceptions. So Yaro was off for a period of time, being assessed by the staff. And then in the run of play, he came back on. He was allowed back on by the referee. So Yaro comes back on for a few minutes and then is unceremoniously subbed out. And Josh Yaro, you can see him visibly, I said miffed, visibly confused at why he's being subbed off. And I get it. As a player, you have a head injury, you are evaluated by the staff. Staff says you're okay to go back in. Nothing else happens between when he's allowed to re-enter, at least nothing else from our point of view happens. We don't see anything happen to Yaro, at least physically, where he re-enters the game and then is subbed off officially. Now, the statement that City put out at the end of the game said, and I quote, "Following an on-field injury, Josh Yaro was assessed by medical staff on the field and moved to the sideline for further evaluation. After an assessment, the player returned to the field. The medical staff continued to monitor the player and determined further evaluation was warranted, at which point Yaro was removed from play. We will provide further updates when available from the medical staff." So the question immediately becomes, they did an evaluation. What did they see that led them to believe that evaluation wasn't the whole story when they let Yara back on the field? And as I said, I don't regret saying it at all on social media. Does protocol need evaluated? Do there need to be additions to the kinds of tests that you're administering on the field that led you to believe he was okay, only for you to watch him move around on the field? Nothing else happened to him physically with the ball in play. And then you say, no, he's actually not good. He needs to come out, because that's a dangerous situation you're putting a player in. When you evaluate him on the sideline, you say he's good to go. What if another ball had hit his head? What if there was contact when he went on the field? And then you actually say, okay, he's not good to go. That's the big concerning part to me. And the last thing before I get your takes, Santi, is there is an MLS rule in play. Competition guidelines say that clubs can make one permanent concussion substitution during a match to replace players with concussion or suspected head injury, regardless of the number of normal substitutes already used. If a team elects to use a concussion substitution, its opponent will receive an additional substitution and opportunity. So this isn't a temporary thing. It's not. And I saw that there was a call out that MLS should implement a temporary substitution, and that has its own pitfalls and caveats of, you got to have a player warmed up. Are you risking injury to a player who's not warmed up to go in as a sub? I mean, that you could get into a whole laundry list of issues with this temporary thing. But no, MLS does not have any kind of rules allowing. I don't know if any league has a rule for a temporary concussion sub. I don't think that's a thing in organized soccer right now, where you're allowing a player to come off the field, replacement comes on, almost like a line change, and then you can bring that player off and on. So what did you feel about how this all went down?
Yeah, at the moment it was scary. As you mentioned on the video, he showed motionless, and from where I was on the booth, I noticed, I was like, oh, he's not moving. But I also noticed like nobody was like freaking out or saying, so it was like, oh, maybe they saw some movement. But then he was evaluated, and he has had concussions before. That's something also to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So he was let in the field very quickly, which at the moment I didn't think much, but I didn't understand why he was called back so quickly. And as you mentioned, yeah, maybe the protocol needs to be looked at. The one thing I was thinking about, but this is just me thinking, uh, the team monitors everything. Aside from the independent doctor's assessment, maybe they didn't like something on what they monitor on the players. But when Yaro came out, I saw he went to a dressing room with the independent doctor. So he may have seen something that he didn't like, but it just leaves for questioning, like should they be looking at more things, or should they be not rushing into the assessment, regardless of whether the team is playing with 10 men or not. Like, they need to take care of the players, and hopefully this is looked at.
I think too. I know this is possibly the first time this has happened where there's been a questioning about the player safety in this regard for City. I know Yaro's had concussion issues, but I don't ever recall the handling of the player as a question. One thing I would, and I don't. It's obviously not our place to suggest how medical evaluations are conducted, but I will say in the marketing of this, in the announcing of this, there was questions on social media surrounding who was making these evaluations. Was it the city medical staff? Was it a third party independent staff? Was it someone employed by Major League Soccer? Because that's an unknown at this point based on the statement that City provided. And I would expect some clarity throughout the week, because there is a difference, I think, in perception of, was it the city medical staff that that performed the tests and evaluations? They had him run on the sidelines. They asked him if he's good to go. Maybe they asked him some questions. They let him back on the field, versus an independent physician who has no stake in the game. It's worth clarifying that information, I think, would be helpful to fans as they try to piece together why Yaro was allowed on the field when he was only brought off immediately after that for more evaluations. Because yeah, we're seeing in the chat, everybody who saw what Yaro was doing. Yaro was PO'd when he was having to come off. He did not want to go in the tunnel. He was frustrated. He thought he was good to go. And he was taken into the tunnel, into the locker room for further evaluation. So we hope Yaro's okay. You mentioned this is not his first concussion related issue. So we just hope that he's okay and can return to action safely in the near future. We'll talk about what happened game-wise in a few moments. The other big theme and big story, kind of off the field, was the Klaus goal that was called offside at 68. So we'll get into this in context of the play here in just a few minutes as we go through the match. But the sequence of events that happened here is Klaus scored a goal. The flag went up after the play. This was around 68 minutes. And then the question was there enough to go to review since the call on the field was offside? Olaf Melberg post-game pretty much reiterated that he didn't think it was offside at all. In fact, he had been told it was onside.
There's some confusion there.
There's some confusion, some language issues in the question and the answer, but I think the sentiment was that he firmly believes Klaus was onside and felt that the video replay supported that. The official statement, because there was a pool report placed, a request by the pool of reporters placed to the referees requesting an explanation, and the referee response to the pool report question about the offside call and why it didn't go to VAR was, quote, "All angles were reviewed and there were none that could conclusively prove that St. Louis's number 9 was in an onside position. Therefore, no review could be recommended." Now, when they say no review could be recommended, they mean they couldn't call down for the head official to go to the video and take a look at it again. They didn't think that the video evidence warranted what the call on the field was, which was offside. They didn't feel there was video evidence that would sway the head official one way or another. Now, that's a bold call, giving the video, giving the still images that appear, because we know Major League Soccer doesn't draw lines. They don't utilize the technology that we see in European leagues, where you draw lines and you have specific you're able to create a line that takes care of the camera not being completely center on the field. Technology exists. Major League Soccer doesn't utilize it. And so we're stuck with this. Now, the question Olaf Melberg had post-game, and I share that as a way that I wish the rule would change, or at least the subjectivity of the sideline official would change, is the sideline official clearly thought he was offside, so he raised the flag. Now, he's instructed to wait for the play to finish and then raise the flag. That's nothing new. The question Olaf Melberg had is, why would you put the flag up if you aren't sure, versus allowing the goal? So then now the call on the field would be, it's a goal, and you're saying you need video evidence to overturn the goal. That's not what happened. The sideline official thought it was an offside, put the flag up, and this was a judgment call on the sideline official. Like, there's no, that's what it is. It's the judgment call from the sideline official, who saw his line of sight was Alfredo Morales was in front of the Columbus defender, and then Klaus was a few yards on the other side of the Columbus defender. And it can only be assumed that Alfredo Morales' body was obstructing the Columbus's defender, whose leg kind of clearly was at least right in line with where Klaus's forward motion was. It's a frustrating development. How did you see it, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, to me, just looking at the replays and now that people have posted stuff to social media, yeah, Klaus seemed to be onside. What I wonder is if the line referee, um, since Alfredo Morales was also there, maybe he raised the flag because Alfredo Morales was offside. Obviously, he wasn't involved in the play, but at that point, he had already raised the flag, and then maybe he thought maybe video review will take care of it. But if it had been the other way around, it also leaves me thinking, if they had allowed the goal and they go and do the video review, they could have reached the same conclusion, that there wasn't enough on the angles available
Exactly.
to disallow the goal. So it's frustrating. And I thought maybe when the answer about this will come out, maybe they were going to say something about Morales. Obviously, they went with the camera angles, not enough evidence. But I think Morales being offside may have caused some confusion there at the beginning.
And the obstruction of the defender seemed pretty clear, which further raises the question of if the sideline official wasn't sure because the defender was obstructed and the defender's body parts were obstructed, arms or legs, then why would you make that call thinking he's offside? Why not let the goal stand and then let VAR do its job on the other side? Say, look at these exact angles. If you couldn't see, if you had an obstruction from a player and some of the body parts of the player that would have made the difference, why make that call? That's really all we can say. I feel is you can interview referees until you're blue in the face. You could wonder what that sideline ref was thinking, but end of the day, the sideline ref made a judgment call that he felt he was offside in the moment. And once he made that call, everything changes from a sense of now you have to have evidence to overturn that call. It's not, I'm letting the play go. I think it may be offside, but I don't have a clear and obvious angle of the defensive player, so I'm not going to raise my flag. We're going to take an extra few seconds, a few minutes to look at this, and then we'll see if we can overturn the goal. The call on the field is what mattered, and because the call on the field was what it was, you had to have video evidence, clear and obvious, to overturn that. And they didn't even feel the evidence was clear and obvious to bring it to the official for that opportunity, the head official for that opportunity. So that's that. We'll talk about the impact to the game on that in just a few minutes. But the third really big story that I had is a positive one. So you've got these two negative ones. Let's flip into positive gear for a little bit, Santi. This was the highest expected goal output by City since the Galaxy game on March 9th. The attack was humming a little more than I expected it to against this Columbus team, and it did so in ways that weren't surprising. Columbus had massive possession, over 70% for large portions of the game. We were successful at hitting on the counter for good amounts of time. So looking at how this game started, the Crew did have early possession during the game. They pressured early. They put City back into their defensive half. City absorbed. Ben Lunt had a good save early. And then almost immediately after a 6-minute Ben Lunt save, you had what we talked about last week. When I was talking to Andrew Wiebe last week, I noted that Columbus was pretty lax when it comes to allowing early goals. And this was something City needs to take advantage of. It was like 13, 17, 19 minutes into games this season. Columbus has been allowing early goals. And this was no different. This was fantastic to see from St. Louis that they were actually able to take one of these deficiencies from Columbus, because they don't have very many deficiencies, and they were able to turn it into a goal. Something that we haven't been able to say from the City side is they've been able to turn an opponent's weakness into a goal for themselves, but they did it just 7 minutes into this when on a counterattack, Celio Pompeu took the ball into the final third himself, kind of had a 1v1 moment on that left wing where he's doing what he does best. He's controlling the ball, and then he just explodes with a move behind the lines via a dribble, wins that 1v1, creates space enough to cross over to Klaus, who hits the crossbar on one shot, and then has the perfect timing to allow the ball to bounce back down to him, timing his header to sink it into the bottom right corner of the net, putting City up 1-0 just 1 minute in and sending Energizer Park into a frenzy. What'd you think of the goal?
Well, it was a great play by Celio on the left wing, showing his quality. It's great to see him doing those things again. He also played 90 minutes, so that was great. That now he's good to go for 90 minutes. But great play by Celio, just showing that skill he has on the 1v1, and Klaus after the ball hit the crossbar, just looking for that second opportunity. When he hit the header, I thought it wasn't going to be enough, but I think Patrick Schulte's vision may have been obstructed by the defender in front of him,
Yeah.
so he couldn't get to it. And it was great. It came at a right time. I initially thought about
Mm-hmm.
your conversation with Vivi for sure. I was like, oh, Columbus allowing early goals, but it was also at the right time because right before that, it had been all Columbus creating chances, and I was thinking, oh my god, this is gonna be a bad game because City is not getting the ball, Columbus is dominating, possessing the
Yep.
ball in City's end of the field, and creating some chances, but it came at the right time, and City great on the transition. That was great to see.
When you look at the momentum throughout the game, the beginning of the game kind of had this where you had Columbus for large stretches of the game having significant momentum, but that's really just their possession of the ball. It was dangerous at times in the second half, less so, but this kind of permeated and was the story. It was a story after the goal for quite a bit where St. Louis didn't have much outside of this next opportunity we're going to talk about. But Columbus, when you look at these momentum charts and the game flow, a lot of their quote unquote momentum is just inherent by them possessing the ball. And they're a really good team at possessing the ball because they're not stagnant when they possess it. This is something they did really well against St. Louis, just like they've done against the 7 other teams they've played so far this season, is they're always moving off the ball. And that allows them to create space to pass to where a player is going and not, like we've seen from City a lot, passing to a player and then hoping that that player can then get around a defender somehow. That's what we saw from Columbus really well. And then right after this 7-minute goal, it was about 6 minutes later that it was a transition, a counterattack that Cedric Toyshirt almost had a second goal early on. Alfredo Morales was the one who intercepted this pass. It was a little bit of a high press, and we saw more willingness of City to high press with their 3 attackers. Klaus was leading it a lot of the ways. Cedric Toyshirt was leading it in other ways. But this high press, keeping numbers in the attacking end, allowed Alfredo Morales to intercept a pass in the midfield in the City attacking half, played it up to Klaus, who really quickly got a toe on it, just enough to hold it up for Marcel Hartl. This is what Klaus can do so well, playing that deeper attacking position. He can hold up the ball, plays with his back to goal. It might look ugly. It might look like he's playing on a razor's edge like he did here, but he gets the
Mm-hmm.
job done. He held up the ball just enough for Marcel Hartl to come and take it and then play it to Cedric Toyshirt, who had a 1v1 with a tight angle on the right side and sent it just a little bit high. How great would it have been for Toyshirt to finish this one?
Oh, that would have changed the game because now you're up 2 goals. It's still early, but definitely Columbus will have maybe open up more, take more risk. But it just wasn't in the cards for Toyshar. I was telling
Yeah.
Hector on the broadcast, I was like, last year he would have made that one, but um, this time it didn't go in. But that would have been a game changer. So early, go up 2 goals, and Klaus scored the first one, was involved in this one. I really like what I saw from Klaus in this game, like staying in the box and in that role of holding the ball to create a space, but
Mm-hmm.
close still when he holds the ball, sometimes like he's back to the goal, but he's closer to the box, contrary to what opposite to what we have seen in some other games that he's like all over the place and trying to do
Yeah.
different things. But I really like what I saw from him yesterday.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to do too much. Another thing that Klaus did great, and he was my player of the match. I'll just say that out of the way as a context for this. But it wasn't just holding up the ball, but he was doing well in the box, finding space to receive crosses.
Hmm.
He had the one from Salio that he put it on net. He had one later on from Akil Watson we'll talk about. He was just good positioning to have these kinds of chances. I think Klaus had, I want to say, 6 shots total. Talk about his stats in a minute. Cedric Toyshirt, that was his only shot that he had. So he was doing good work off the ball. He was helping on the field. He was good in the press, but when he came to attacking, it was that miss and bust. Later on in the first half, it was Klaus with another wide shot at 32 minutes from that Akil Watts cross that I mentioned. Klaus looked like he tried to head it far side past Schulte in the same spot that he had scored earlier, and it went just wide. Ben Lunt had a couple good saves in the first half that are notable, 34 and 40. And it seemed like we were going to go into the first half with the 1-0 lead. It seemed like the momentum was there. It seemed like St. Louis was doing a great job defensively to absorb the pressure and then hit on the counters at various times. They were picking their battles. They were effective early, but it wasn't meant to be. And it wasn't meant to be in a really frustrating manner. I took a screen cap of this. I'm going to share it right now for those looking on the live stream as I describe what this goal ended up being. It was a typical Crew possession in the St. Louis half on the left side, progressing it up. You had Diego Rossi receiving the ball, and he played it up into space for Max Arfston, who took the ball up into the left wing near the end line and sent a cross over a sliding Akil Watts. Now, when he sends this cross in, there are 3 players near the goal. 2 are near the box, or 2 are near the goal, right near Ben Lunt, and they're being marked by Henry Kessler and Conrad Wallem. The third is Steven Moreira, and he's outside of the penalty area. He's so far outside of the penalty area that he's even outside of the half circle. And when he's outside of this half circle, he's being marked by Celio Pompeu. It seems pretty clear that this was Celio's responsibility to guard Steven Moreira based on where everybody was, because everybody else had been kind of pulled more towards St. Louis's right side, because that's where the ball was being progressed. That's where the Crew possession was. You move the city numbers near where the bulk of the Crew players are. And so with Celio defending Steven Moreira, Moreira just makes this miraculous run from outside the 18-yard box all the way into City's left on his right side near the box, and he catches the cross with his foot and is able to bang it home without skipping a beat. It was perfect timing from Moreira, but it was also really unfortunate defending by Celio for Moreira to be able to run straight past him, get into the space behind Celio and on the opposite side of Wallem and receive that cross. So great run, pretty poor defending. That was a really frustrating point. So when Moreira scored this goal, Santi, am I putting too much emphasis on the defending by Celio, or was this just such a tremendous run by Moreira that we really can't fault City? Because I tend to say that it's Celio in that responsibility. He knew who his responsibility was, but he was watching the play develop across the field versus watching where his man was.
No, I think you're right. It wasn't the best defending by Celio, and actually, I thought you had been the one who disconnected, so I kept talking, and I was talking about it because I thought you were gonna talk about that. But yeah, it wasn't good defending by Celio, and then Columbus. These players know so well their positioning, and he made a good run, went past Celio, and then he had a lot of space to take that ball and put it away from Ben Lund. But yeah, you can say Celio was ball watching, wasn't aware of the man coming behind him, and in the end, that ended up being the equalizer. And I was saying that Celio and Steven Moreira were like basically even on the first goal from City. Celio won that 1v1, went past Moreira and passed it to Klaus, and then before the end of the half, Moreira went past Celio and was able to score for Columbus.
Yeah, and that was nearly that nearly led to another goal by Columbus. AZ Jackson almost scored in transition right before half two, sent a ball just wide when Conrad Wallem looked like he might have missed an assignment. So there was some frustrating defensive lapses there at the end of the first half. City, I guess at the end of the day, you could say they were lucky to go in 1-1 given what happened in stoppage time of the first half. And the stats at the end of the first half were not surprising. The Crew had 76% possession. The expected goals, because of those two shots in stoppage time, the Crew had 1.54 expected goals. St. Louis had 0.66, mostly based off those two Klaus shots and the Toyshirt shot. at 7 and 13. So not a lot of action from City, not a lot of dangerous chances created after 13 minutes. And the passing really highlights what the possession did. Columbus had 314 accurate passes. 91% of their passes were accurate, compared to just 68 passes completed by St. Louis. 314 to 68 total. And 41 of the 68 passes by St. Louis were in our own half, whereas 200 of the 314 Crew passes were in their opposition half. That's a massive juxtaposition, but it's not surprising necessarily compared to what we expected. The last really point to reinforce just where the tilt was in the first half is that 122 passes into the final third, or passes in the final third, occurred by the Crew, just 13 by St. Louis. If that tells you how St. Louis was hitting on the counter and how little time they were spending in the final third compared to the Crew, 122 to 13 on final third passes. Second half opened, and it didn't take long for St. Louis to fall behind on this one. We saw, I thought, a willingness in the second half to be more dynamic in pressing, to continue the glimpses of high pressing that we saw. And unfortunately, it kind of burned us just 10 minutes into the half. Santi, I counted 7 players by St. Louis in the Crew's defensive half. So 7 players that we were pressing higher than midfield when this goal sequence happened at 55 minutes, where Diego Rossi scored to put the Crew up 2-1. 7 players in the Crew's defensive half. They played it right through our midfield. The call on the broadcast was perfect. As Twellman noted, they just burned straight through our midfield. It was a give and go to Dylan Chambeau, and he took the ball from their defensive side and just carried it all the way through our midfield, opening up space. And this is what the Crew did so well so often, is they would get the ball to one of their players, usually in a channel area, and that player would have so much space ahead of them. And that player took that space. The player dribbled, and the player didn't give the ball up until they were engaged. They took every bit of space that they were afforded. And unfortunately, in this instance, it burned St. Louis, because Dylan Chambeau didn't pass the ball until he absolutely had to. And when he passed the ball, it was to a wide open Diego Rossi. He took maybe 4 or 5 steps up, and he shot the ball from distance outside the 18-yard box, past to Timo Baumgartel, who was trying to engage on Rossi. But the shot was pretty great. It was a fantastic shot that got past Ben Lunt on the left and just sliced through City's defense as they were still kind of getting back in transition, trying to drop back from that high press.
Yeah, it was just good play by Columbus. They basically broke the press, broke the lines from City on that press. As you mentioned, 7 players trying to recover the ball on Columbus field, and Chambeau, when like basically unmarked, was able to get the ball to the final third, and you cannot give so much space to Diego Rossi to shoot. I think so. City was trying to get back, and I think defense was too deep, and he had time and space to shoot. And player so talented, you cannot give him so much space.
It's not unlike the goal we conceded against SKC, where I think it was an Ostrak turnover at midfield, and then SKC just kind of took the ball, kind of like the Toyshirt shot at the beginning of the game too, where midfielder takes possession of the ball and then immediately moves it up, and they separate the lines from the back line and the midfield so much that there's too much space to be able to properly manage positioning. When St. Louis had pressed with 7 players, this honestly, once this goal cleared and I had, gathered my thoughts after this, it really reminded me of what Olaf Melberg had been saying about why we haven't been a high pressing team this season, even though he wants to be. And he kept going back to the quality of players. And this was an example that, as much as I hated to admit it, may be what he was talking about. When you're pressing high like that and you don't convert, you don't turn the ball over, you don't take possession of the ball, you have to make sure that you're defensively structured to where you're not allowing this kind of transition. And we weren't. We didn't have the quality to intercept the ball. We didn't have the quality to prevent space when they ended up in transition after they beat our high press. And as much as I hate to admit it, this might be what Olaf had been referring to, of the lack of quality we have and why we haven't been a high pressing team so far.
Yeah. So maybe he's right in that assessment. But even after the goal, City show some signs of life, and almost found that that equalizer. But yeah, just a specific plays like that that leave you thinking, and those can change games. And you give the ball to Diego Rossi, one of the most talented players in the league, and he can be very dangerous.
Yeah, we did have a great second half. I mean, that has to go noted. And it came with the substitution. So you had two substitutions kind of right after that goal happened. Daniel Gazdag, the $4 million cash for trade signing by Columbus, entered the game for AZ Jackson at 55. And then Simon Betcher entered for Cedric Toyshirt at 60. You assume this is prescribed from Cedric Toyshirt because he's still he had still been building his fitness from a few games ago with his injury. I would hope that maybe he's ready to go 75, 80, 90 after this week. But he went 60 and Simon Betcher entered. Now, Betcher did have a lot of good opportunities. And so before Ostrak and Joyner entered at 87, you did have quite a few chances by St. Louis. Marcel Hartl had a free kick from the touchline at 67 that, I mean, almost went in the goal. I think Patrick Schulte had a surprise save. He wasn't expecting the ball to curl in the way it did. At 68, you had the Klaus offside goal happen, and we already touched on that, but here's the context where Betcher had just entered the game. Klaus gets called offside on the goal. We couldn't equalize, but we didn't stop the pressure. This was pretty impressive too, and it coincided around this time, around the 68-minute mark, might have been a little before or after. A note was passed from the coaching staff to Akil Watts at the sideline, and Watts took the note. I think it was right after this Klaus incident where they were restarting, and Watts gave the note to Hebert, and then Hebert went and talked to Conrad Wallum. And what ended up happening is they moved into a back four. So we had asked Olaf Melberg here recently about not shifting into a back four, about how he's been so far unwilling for most of the entire season, save maybe a couple of minutes tactically at the end of a game, why he hasn't moved or adjusted and sent more attackers up in certain scenarios. This was an example of a time where he made a tactical adjustment, a pretty significant one, where he does move Conrad Wallum up into the left midfield role. Kyle Hebert takes more of a left back. Timo Baumgartel and Henry Kessler are your two center backs, and Akil Watts is your right back. You add that extra attacker into the front end with Conrad Wallum, and it creates a pretty good amount of chances. At 72, you have Betcher intercepting the ball really high up the field, almost in the box, if not in the box. And then he shoots it wide. A little bit more composure by Betcher after he took control of the ball, and he might have put that ball in the back of the net. And then you had right before the subs, Klaus with a header on target from a Stalio cross. It was saved by a diving Patrick Schulte at 85. The subs come in at 87 with Ostrak and Joyner, where you move Joyner to a left back role and you add in Ostrak into an attacking role, replacing Marcel Hartl and Kyle Hebert. 88 minutes, you have Simon Betcher receiving an Alfredo Morales. It wasn't a cross. It was more of an overhead pass from deep in midfield, something that Morales had done in preseason before with pretty pinpoint accuracy as Betcher breaks another line. Betcher, again, getting behind the lines, couldn't put it past Schulte on this one, but it was the second time that Betcher really had a good chance with an unfortunate first touch that he just couldn't wrangle and couldn't put it on goal. Simon Betcher, this was the sub that we wanted to see and the role that we had thought Betcher could play when you're starting Klaus and Toyshirt. I thought he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, he did. Just bad luck on finishing, and hopefully he will go back to scoring soon. But yeah, just a bad luck for him, bad night. But those could have changed the game, especially not this one that we just talked about at 88 minutes, the one on the 72nd minute that he intercepted the ball. I think he just he could have taken an extra half a second, but obviously it's easy to say that from here. But yeah, that was one that should have been a goal and could have given time to City to go for the 3-2.
You know, there are moments in the press conferences of the past few games where Olaf has very frustratingly said that he was happy with the quality of chances that we created. He felt we did enough to win. And at times it's hard to believe him because you don't feel like that passes the eye test. You don't feel like we saw enough quality in chance creation and definitely not enough quality in finishing to really do the job. But I could easily point to how this game could have been 4 or 5-2 with St. Louis win if these chances had been finished, because they were really good opportunities created. The Toy Shirt one early, the Betcher ones at the end of the game, Klaus with a couple good chances. I believe I buy into the concept that this was one of our better chance creation matches that we've played, and definitely supports the expected goals being the best since the Galaxy match, and I think the third best overall this season. The finishing still wasn't there. We have work to be crisp on these counterattacks, but for us to be able to take the second best team statistically speaking, the Columbus Crew, to the wire like this, yeah, it's at home and you expect to win at home. But this is a game that you feel you can build on, and the narrative still can change with a win against Vancouver next week, the absolute best team in MLS, because of what you saw positivity come from chance creation, better build up play when you have such low possession. For St. Louis to be able to create as many chances as they had while having, what was it, 24% possession in the first half, they raised it to about 32 or 41% possession in the second half, ended with 32 overall. But they did what they needed to do, especially in the second half, with the tactical adjustments that Olaf made, the quality of attackers that we had, that they could have easily won this match. And that's a lot compared to what we were saying going into this match about how overwhelmed St. Louis could be against such a powerhouse Crew team, undefeated in MLS, still undefeated in MLS, and what St. Louis had been struggling with coming into this. So that's why I think there's a lot of positivity to take on this. But as I mentioned on Blue Sky earlier, all of that positivity, all of that excitement in what we showed in this game could go away if we don't build that momentum. We have to keep on the uphill slope of continuing this progression, continuing to do something with this, because it has to start resulting in a win. You could be excited about the we could have 4, we could have 5 goals, but at the end of the day, we had 1 goal. So finishing remains the absolute biggest problem for the St. Louis City team.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, a team can build up from this. Obviously, Saturday game, so one fewer day to prepare for the game. But Vancouver, that is the best team in MLS, and what a better way to confirm that progression, that momentum, than a good result against Vancouver. Then, if you look at, like, if you win against Vancouver and you look at these 2 games, yeah, 3 points from 2 games at home, but going toe to toe with 2 of the best teams in MLS wouldn't be bad.
No, not at all. And that's where this is a tough stretch, because you did have a lot of things that you implemented correctly in this game. You had a strong start. You played almost like you expected to, but you did what you needed to do in that role of not having possession. You kept the energy high. Mark Stock on YouTube, Beyond Chances Creation, was one of the best energy games to watch. And I feel that. I feel that throughout. I feel that this had more of a positive vibe than the last 3 games combined, just about. And it wasn't derailed by that goal just before halftime. It wasn't derailed by the goal right after halftime. 2 of the most integral parts. You could argue that what I like to say about importance of timing in goals, the 3 most important times, I'll say it again, to score a goal in a soccer game is the beginning of the game, right before halftime, and right after halftime, because they set the tone for so much. They can change entire structures of tactics. And that's when all of these happened. So you saw St. Louis unable to take a lead into half. That has to change. You saw St. Louis come back and stay high energy, stay with, have good tactical changes made in response to going down. I want to see that continue. So there's a lot of things you can learn from that, that didn't work out for you, but also a lot of things that you need to build upon. And that's not even taking into consideration the Josh Yaro injury. So another center back down. And you hope that he's able to return and you still have that depth. But I was encouraged by the tactical adjustments made by Olaf around 66. The way he changed just 10 or 11 minutes in, the Klaus goal was disallowed, and he changed up what he needed to do to try to create more, to continue pushing the energy, continue pushing the envelope of what St. Louis was creating. It worked in chance creation. It worked in limiting Columbus, because in the other stats in the second half, St. Louis had 11 shots, 5 on target. In the second half, St. Louis had 5 shots, 2 on target. Columbus only had 2 shots total, 1 on target in the second half. If you limit Columbus to 59% possession and 2 total shots, that's a positive thing that you can build on. That's something that you take to Vancouver and you say, we know we can hang with these teams. We know we're better than our record indicates. We know we're capable of more. So that's what we have to take out of this game, in my opinion. And that's on top of the individual performances. Like Toyshirt, I mentioned, should have had a goal. Betcher had a lot of good opportunities. Got to work on the finishing. You have got to get better, and you have to get better quick when it comes to finishing, because the chance creation is only going to buy you so much in the fandom. It's only going to buy you so much from me and others who want to see the finishes, because that has to be the ultimate goal. You have to finish these chances. Otherwise, the chances don't mean anything. We mentioned Timo Baumgartel getting his first start early in the game, first start in MLS. Klaus played 90 for only the third time all season, back-to-back games. Yeah, so you could see clear build by Klaus. We mentioned a few games ago, wondering if he was even favored by Olaf Melberg. Now it kind of seems like we're past that. Now it kind of seems like Klaus, and Lutz Fenischel mentioned this on with Tom Ackerman on KMOX last weekend, yesterday, in fact. I forget what day it is. But he mentioned that it takes a new manager 10 games or so to really find his groove, to understand the players, to get a good feel. And that seems like a number that Lutz threw out as something for the fans to grab onto and say, all right, you get 10 games and we'll see where the progression's going. Through 8 games, that's been so up and down that you have a tough time drawing a straight line correlation to anything. But at this point in the past few games, you're seeing Salio favored, you're seeing Klaus favored, and you're seeing Toyshirt return to health. This seems like a lineup that is built to build on what we just saw, build on Klaus's 1 goal, 0.59 expected goals, 4 shots on target, 6 total shots. And Klaus did everything else too. 3 of 3 tackles, 9 of 15 duels won. There's a lot to build off of in this game.
Definitely, definitely. But just a short turnaround with Vancouver coming on Saturday, and it's the perfect opportunity to show how much progress the team has made. I hope we are not talking about a bad result next Sunday morning.
I definitely hope not either. Yeah, who wants to have a bad conversation on Easter Sunday? That's for sure. But let's look around the league really quick before we look where St. Louis goes from here. Santi, any games stand out for you this weekend in Major League Soccer? Philadelphia was shut out. That doesn't happen very often. Seattle had a 1-0 win against Dallas. Colorado had a 3-2 win against San Diego. The Galaxy drew Houston. LAFC beat San Jose 2-1. Some of the notable games in the West. Sporting KC, as I told my wife, I said, well, it's funny, Sporting KC lost again, so it's at least a little bit of a silver lining no matter what. And then she clapped back with, yeah, but they've scored 4 goals in 2 games.
That's a good
So,
thought. I like that, Michelle.
yeah, so I did not have a response to that in the slightest. It was a quick way to get me to shut up, that's for sure. The game of the week for me outside of St. Louis, and we alluded to it a little bit, Vancouver, Austin. 5-1, Vancouver defeated Austin. Austin was a team that came into this match with the best goals against in the entire league, and they gave up 5, including a haul by Brian White. I had to Google this one to find out, what do you call 4 goals in one match? And in English speaking countries, it's colloquially termed a haul. So now Brian White, a player who has historically punished St. Louis pretty well, including Ben Lund. Ben Lund does not have good memories facing Vancouver going there. Now we have Brian White coming off a 4-goal outburst, Vancouver winning 5-1 against Austin. That's the form that they're bringing into St. Louis.
Yeah, hopefully that's all the scoring Brian White had in the last few games. Hopefully he'll take a break and not punish City. But yeah, I couldn't believe with Austin being the best defense up to yesterday in MLS to take that beating, and Vancouver even coming from a midweek game in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They got a good result playing away in Mexico, and now they are in the semifinals. So Vancouver keeps doing really well with the new coach and with the pieces they have, even at times without Ryan Gold. But they are doing great. So great opportunity for City to measure itself against one of the best teams in MLS at the moment.
Before we pivot to where St. Louis goes from here, I put a call out for questions and said we answer them. There was a question on Instagram that I think is actually fascinating, so I'm going to spend 30 seconds on it. It's an easy answer for me, though. Question is from Eric B. Pfeiffer. which of our past players at their peak with us that was either traded or dropped would benefit this current squad the most?
Ooh.
It's easy for me. It's Indiana Vassilev.
Yeah.
I see certain players like that are high quality players like Tim Parker, Nico Gioacchini, at their peaks, Sam Adeniran, AZ Jackson maybe, but it's Indiana Vassilev, and not just because Olaf called him out last week as a player that would benefit him, but he's right. You slide in Indiana Vassilev. I don't care if he wants to play at a wing position or not. You slide him in at right wing back with Thomas Totland out, and I think this team is so much better. I mean, that would have been a missing piece that could have filled this gap so much better than what we've been trying to roll out with moving Conrad Wallem from side to side, trying Kyle Hebert at wing back, Akil Watts out there. It's bar none Indiana Vassilev. How about you?
That's a good thought. Just to not repeat it at their peak. Um, I will go and just aside from yesterday's game that the offense worked so well, but um,
Mm-hmm.
I think Adeniran at his peak
Mm-hmm.
when he was
At his
scoring
peak.
and playing well, just to have more competition at that number 9 position.
That's a fair point. Can't argue with that. That was a good question. I appreciate that. So going forward from here, St. Louis falls to 2 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws over 8 matches, drops to 12th in the West, -1 goal differential now, 8 points in 8 matches, now 2 points out of a playoff spot, which at some point you got to start talking about those playoff standings, the supporter shield standings, because we are about 20-25% of the way through the
Mm-hmm.
season. Things are escalating quickly here in how these games are starting to add up. So next Saturday, we welcome the Western Conference leading and MLS Supporter Shield leading Vancouver Whitecaps, fresh off that 5-1 win over Austin, 4 Brian White goals, to Energizer Park for another extremely tough test. And beyond that, this Thursday on Flyover Footy, we will be able to recap a little bit of U.S. Open Cup match. The round of 32 draw should be occurring this
Mm-hmm.
Thursday. And so the Open Cup that St. Louis is hosting the first full week of May. By the end of this week, we should know our opponent. Matches take place in the Open Cup this week in the 3rd round. And so the draw should be, I think they're still having it on Paramount Plus at noon Central on Thursday, if I recall. But we will have that to look at on Thursday for Flyover Footy, in addition to our full Vancouver Whitecaps preview. Santi, there was, I don't, I'm not going to end on this. I'm going to mention something else after this, but there was a new player rumor that dropped on Monday morning from the website or the article Kicker. It sounds like there is a rumor that Frederik Jensen, a 27-year-old national player, midfielder from Augsburg in the Bundesliga, is rumored to be close to signing with St. Louis City. The report has him, with his contract expiring in June, has him close to signing a deal that would result in a transfer fee being paid. Now, Jensen has 5 goals and 7 assists in 7 seasons with Augsburg. He has 100 appearances with 45 starts. He's periodically injured. He plays a midfield role, attacking, central, can play wing. This is the second kind of rumor of a player that we've had interest in this transfer window. The first one didn't work out, and I didn't even mention it because it was a little more outlandish than this one. Does this garner any excitement for you?
No. just the fact, that you mentioned periodic injuries. No,
Yeah.
we don't need another player like that, and just his position. I don't think that's what the team needs at the time. If
No.
if he was more like a number 5, like central midfielder, but more like a Chris Dorking, yeah, I will say okay, maybe that could be a good addition. But no, I don't. I'm not excited about that one at all.
I mean, midfield with our current injuries, and you also wonder how long Chris Durkin could be out for, and if this plays a factor in that. Chris Durkin and Edu Leuven. Leuven
Mm-hmm.
being out on family leave. We have not heard an update in a couple of weeks. I don't think anybody's asked for an update, trying to be sensitive to the
Yeah,
situation,
yeah.
because we don't know what it deals with. As a reminder, we have no idea specifically what Edu Leuven's family leave or outing not due to an injury relates to, though, we know about his wife's cancer diagnosis. That's the only thing that we have to guess on. We hope to see Leuven back as quickly as possible, but we have no updates on him. We have no updates on how long Chris Durkin will be out for, but we know it's an MCL issue and it could be long term. So we are relying on Alfredo Morales as your defensive midfielder. If you're looking for a defensive midfielder and you think this Frederick Jensen could be that guy, okay, maybe. But if you're looking for a box to box and attacking midfielder, we've got those.
Yeah.
We don't, the way that Olaf runs this formation, I struggle to see why we need another when you have Marcel Hartl, you have Celio Pompeu, you have Tomas Ostrak, you even have homegrown players that you could give time to. A 27-year-old oft injured player from the Bundesliga doesn't do it for me either.
No.
So I told you I didn't want to end on that. And, I've got nothing else in our notes, but Santi, what is the one positive thing that the most positive thing that you want to take away from this game that we can kind of end on a happy note with?
For me, Klaus.
Yeah.
Just his presence in the box. And even when he was holding the ball, he was closer to Columbus box. And that's where we want to see him. Just that should be his role. And I think Melberg and him understood that yesterday, and I really like what I saw from him, and I hope to see more performances like that.
100%. I'm going to cheat and say the starting lineup. I think this starting lineup, with the number of attackers that we had and the quality that they showed, it wouldn't have worked if they didn't actually show quality, like Klaus doing what we expect him to do and being a lot more efficient in the final third. Celio with a lot of good individual performances, dribbling the ball. The one concern that I have is leaving Marcel Hartl in the central midfield for too many games. I talked to Weeby about this last week, and he said that's not a long-term answer.
No.
So I would love to see some more Tomas Ostrak in that role, even if it stretches your midfield a little thinner. And what that means probably is one of Celio, Klaus, or Teuscher doesn't start. And so I don't know. If you see productivity from your attacking trio in Celio, Klaus, and Teuscher, maybe you do leave Marcel Hartl a little deeper. Maybe you do allow him that central midfield role for an extended period of time. The thing that I don't want to lose is what Marcel Hartl can offer in chance creation in the attack. And so I guess it's what is the best sum of our parts is the thing for me. And if Marcel Hartl is doing everything that he can do deeper in central midfield, connecting lines, playing the ball up to our attackers from that role, even getting higher at times, because at the Teuscher chance, he was pretty high up with Klaus. Give him that freedom and flexibility. I'm okay with that if you're getting what you need from your attacking trio, which I do want to see that attacking trio a little bit more often. I saw enough that I want to see him go forward. And I don't want to take the change that Olaf made in the last 25 minutes with moving to a 4 in the back and moving Wallem up to the right mid. I don't want to necessarily take that and say, okay, that worked really well because of what we were able to produce after that. Let's now start with that. It's the same concept that I had, I think, against SKC, where I like the adjustments, but at the end of the day, there's a tactics-free zone mentality about it, where you're chasing a goal, you're down. It's not apples to apples in how you can start a game based on where the game flow was going at that moment you made that change. Count it for what it is. It was a good tactical adjustment by Olaf Melberg. We created plenty of chances early on in the game with our starting 11 and our formation. The adjustments worked in the state of the game at that time. Take it for what it is about a coach who's making good tactical decisions. And I want to see this starting 11 get another chance.
Yeah. Now we'll see what Yaro's situation is and who will replace him in that lineup. Something that obviously it worked yesterday, but I was thinking, why did he go Akil Watts and move Wallem to the left instead of putting another center back like Michael Wenzel was on the bench? That could have been the substitution, but obviously I'm not the coach.
Second game in a row where a center back gets injured. Second game in a row where Conrad Wallem moves from one side of the field to the other. It's starting to be a trend that I don't want to see continue on any level. No more center back injuries, please. But we hope to get more updates as well on returning players. Roman Berkey, I mentioned earlier. Thomas Totland he trained with the team last week. We'll see if he continues and if he starts to get some more minutes in training with the team ahead of Vancouver, even if it's a short week. There's one less day of training. So we'll see if we can get any of these players off the injury list and back into the lineup. That's it for us on Flyover Footy. Thank you for joining us on this lunchtime fallout on the day after look at 2-1 loss by City against the Columbus Crew. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. We'll be back with you on Thursday to preview the Vancouver Whitecaps. Stay tuned for Flyover Footy throughout the week for more updates on St. Louis City as we get them, and we will talk to you later.
Vamos City.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the live stream. Have a good start to your week, and let's try to stay positive as much as we can on a 4-game losing streak and build off what we can. Hopefully we get some better news on injuries, and we'll see you all back at the park on Saturday.
See you.